about 9 times the speed of sound. Roger.
What's up guys, my name is Emil and I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel. What we're going to be working on today is a 2010 Audi A4 B8 manual transmission 2-liter turbo quattro vehicle. I love these cars. I absolutely love them because back in 2009, 2010, when Volkswagen and Audi introduced a 2-liter engine, they had timing chain issues and these things blow up engines like crazy. I've gone through a number of them. I've gone through a number of the Audis. I've gone through a number of Volkswagens with the same engine. Generally, I look for a car which is semi-low mileage with a blown 2-liter turbo. Take the engine out, fix it, put it back together, sell the car, make some money. Today is actually a little bit different. You know, I've been stuck at home for the last year, just like everybody else out there. And if you're a car guy, girl, you've probably done this probably a few times over the last year, which is, you know, buy a project car. So I went ahead and saw this, not so locally, but, you know, in Canada, and went ahead and picked it up. And today we're going to try and see if we can figure out what the heck's going on with this engine. So what we're dealing with is a 2010 Audi A4 2-liter turbo with an oil pressure problem. To make things more complicated, that oil pressure problem is causing a check engine light that I mentioned the previous owner told me about. That check engine light is related to a camshaft implausible signal. As we dig into the oil system, we're going to see that the oil pressure is responsible for adjusting the camshaft. So these are the primary culprits that I'm going after. It's either a bad oil pressure causing a camshaft adjustment issue, or it's a broken camshaft adjuster that's kind of coming up as a bad oil pressure. This episode was a bit of a roller coaster of emotions for me because pretty much everything I did seemed to fix the car until, you know, I parked it and then it seemed to not fix it. So let's see if we can actually diagnose this problem. It seems a lot of folks are actually dealing with the same oil pressure camshaft sort of related issue, but I have not yet seen a solution to it. I'd love to see some comments below if you've dealt with this, if you have any ideas, or, you know, if you finish the video and you figure out that I missed, you know, the most obvious thing out there, please by all means comment below. So let's get our hands dirty and try and see if we can solve this problem. The oil system itself, not too complicated, certainly a little bit different for this motor, so let's have a look at that. You've got your oil pump coming up the bottom, bringing oil out of the pan, pretty standard, driven by the crankshaft through a chain. There's a tensioner there, not too complicated. The oil goes up through the filter housing, which is right there. And what's somewhat unique about this motor in the A4 compared to, for example, a Passat or a Jetta, is that it actually has two pressure sensors. Okay, you can see one right there, that's the brown one, and then you can see one right there, and that's the blue one. Okay, so this is the low pressure sensor, and this is the sort of higher pressure sensor. What they've done on this motor, and as far as I read it, the reason for it is to reduce consumption at highway cruising or whatever. They've added this valve right at the bottom of the block, right above the oil pan, and this valve switches from high oil pressure to low oil pressure. That's why you have the two sensors, because one actually measures the standard oil pressure at idle, whatever, and the second one measures the higher limits once the valve kicks in. So the three pieces work together. I've gone and replaced all three, nothing helps. Why originally when I bought it the valve was actually unplugged is because it's kind of like a fail-safe. It's designed to fail in a, I guess, open condition. So that's why the guy was able to drive it daily, and that's why I was able to take it away without seeing any codes before I left his house, because that was unplugged. In other words, the car does not throw a code or doesn't throw a an oil pressure warning because that valve is off, pressure is at its highest. With the valve plugged, we can take a look. If we start it now, and like I mentioned, love the seats. So and we're gonna shut this off pretty quick, but I just wanted to show you with that light, with that column, I'm getting oil pressure switch for reduced oil pressure. And actually, after a while, if you try to drive the car, the camshaft implausible signal comes up. All right, so let's shut this off just to prevent any damage. So this is what we're dealing with. So in today's episode, basically, we're gonna go ahead and replace the oil pump. All right, I've already replaced both of these sensors with brand new ones. I've replaced the valve at the bottom with a different one. Everything seems to function properly, but I still have no oil pressure. Okay, so what we're gonna do now, drain the oil, drop the pan, get the pump out, replace the valve. I've got a new valve here. So as far as parts go, we've got a new pan, we've got a new valve, I've got a brand new original oil pump. And the one thing that you kind of want to look at is the code there. So you can see this is the DF version, as I believe the original is called AF. It's 06H115105AF. The DF is the newest, most up-to-date version of the pump. And there's a video I'm going to share below, which talks about the sort of differences between the AF and the DF. And it looks like they've gone and replaced the pressure spring with a bigger one. So this pump is supposed to hold better pressure than the original. So that's the work for today. Let's go get it done. All right, first things first, we got to drain the oil, take the pan off. This is the oil level sensor that's going to come off. I'm a little worried about this gasket maker here, to be honest. That to me means that these guys, the previous mechanic, took this pan off, and I'm very curious to see whether that was done before or after the oil pressure issues. Technically, there's no reason to drop the pan. If you're just doing the timing, you don't need to access that. But looking at the gasket is the same here as it is on the cover, so it's entirely possible that these guys took a bunch of parts off, or maybe the engine was out and they were doing a bunch of stuff. So God knows what the hell happened here, but we're gonna have to take the pan off. Now it's a little bit tricky. I might not have good access to some of these bolts, but we're gonna try our best. Yeah, this is a little bit hard with the car just on the ramps here. It would have been a lot easier if I had the lift available. Certainly would have freed up a little bit of room, but anyways, it's not the end of the world. It's an annoying, dirty job, but it's not impossible. The interesting part with the pan though is kind of what's inside of it. So now that's a first for me. And if I had to venture a guess, to me that looks like chain link pins. And if anybody has a better idea of what that might be, please let me know. There's about, I think I found about 6 of those inside there. It's entirely possible that these are leftovers from that timing event. However, if that pan was dropped, why were these not cleaned out? The other interesting thing is there's quite a bit of like broken plastic, if you will, pieces in the pan. I'm not really sure what this would be, where this would be coming from. It's quite a bit of it. See, it's like a black plastic, broken black plastic in there. Anyways, it's a dirty, the oil pan is definitely dirty. It's not in a good condition. So I'm kind of happy that I popped this open, even just for cleaning this up if this is left over from before. Hopefully this is not something that actually happened, you know, recently kind of thing, and hopefully it's got nothing to do with the oil pressure issue. Now, the one thing I did want to show you, because I did not know how to do, is how to remove the chain from the pump sprocket here. So you got to get yourself a pin of some sorts. pick, I guess. Both of these will do the job. However, I'm pretty oily at this point. It's kind of hard to actually hold this guy. It's sliding. So this is gonna go in and it's gonna grab the tensioner. So now the thing is, the tensioner bolt is only accessed through the timing cover, which we cannot take off because it's a huge job. So to do this job, what you gotta do, here, let me see if I can actually show it to you. What you've gotta do, there we go. There's the tensioner there. All right, that's the tensioner. The bolt is above it, and this is the chain. So the pump sits right here. So actually what you do is you put the pick there and you pull the tensioner away so that you can release the tension and get the chain like so. All right, now this is a little bit skinny, so it keeps sliding as you see. Hopefully, you know, it's not gonna break the tensioner there. But this is basically how you release the pressure, the tension on the chain, and then you get your pump out. All right, here it is underneath. It is quite dirty, to be honest. Like I said, there was a lot of oil leaking from this motor, so we're gonna try and clean this up as much as possible and put it back together the right way. Hopefully this fixes our issues. And just the last thing to confirm, the pump is actually AF. Like I mentioned earlier, the power part number there, so 06H115105 AF. So this is the original pump from the motor, and supposedly this spring, which controls the pressure, has been updated on the DF, which I have, which is the new one. All right, otherwise I can't really see anything particularly wrong with the pump itself. So, you know, hopefully it is just that. It's either just worn or yeah, I can't really tell just looking at the blades there. Can't see any damage or anything. So hopefully it is just that. It's just the spring here controlling the pressure. All right, so messy job. Make sure you have cardboard underneath just to capture all of it, because there's going to be a lot of oil coming out of that. Okay, now let's start putting everything back together so we can start the car up. All right, I've got the oil pan on. I've got the new sensors in. I've got the new valve in. Accessory belt is back on. As far as hardness on this job, it's a little tight around the oil pan, so a couple of the bolts are really hard to access. Now I'm looking at it. It appears that maybe if you drop the steering column, there's two bolts that hold it. It looks like it will drop down a little bit, just while still being attached to the tires and stuff. You might free up a little bit of space for that one bolt that's really hard to get. The actual pump was fairly straightforward. The valve, the only annoying part is that you can't really see the bolt where it's holding the valve. Not a huge deal. All right, we'll give it a start. Before we do, something I've already done, so you definitely want to do is, before you put the oil pump in, prime it up. Basically, without the intake or whatever you want to call it, the little tube there, you can just pour oil right in it, turn the pump so it basically gets oil in inside the pump. I've done this job before on a different car where I had no oil pressure once everything was assembled back up, and it all came down to you know, I thought I had, you know, broken something, whatever. I took it down, took the pump back out, reprimed it, so basically put it in oil and just spun the shaft. Oil pressure right back up, no issues. So definitely prime your oil pump. You don't want to be starting the engine with a, you know, dry oil pump, even though chances are it will suck up the oil pretty quick. You don't want to do that. The second thing I like to do, I usually do that if I'm swapping turbos, for example. Unhook the spark plugs and crank the car without starting it. So that's, you know, low RPM. It allows the pump to get the oil basically circulating around the engine. I usually do that for turbos because if they're, you know, if it's a brand new turbo, it's dry, you want to get the oil in it before you actually start putting you know, stress on the turbo. So I've already primed it. I've already turned it with the plugs off. So now we're just gonna start the car and see. Hopefully we're not gonna get any oil pressure lights. So that's promising. Before it was definitely throwing a cold pretty quickly. I've got a whole new jug of oil, even though the one I took out was already brand new anyways. It was very, very black. My guess is the engine is quite dirty inside. I've got a whole new jug of oil in there. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let it warm up. If everything still looks good, I'm gonna take it for a spin around the block. If everything still looks good, I'm gonna add a you know, a little bit of sea foam or like engine flush, whatever I find in the local store there, and I'm gonna drive it probably just back and forth a couple of times to the store without really putting a whole lot of mileage. Usually people keep it for like 100 kilometers to really get it around. I don't want to do that. Frankly, it's not gonna clean a whole lot, but I do want that. There's clearly garbage in the bottom from what I saw. So I want to, you know, kind of give the engine a bit of a wash and toss that oil out, new filter, new oil, and hopefully we're done with this project. All right, so we replaced the pump. We're gonna have to talk about this a little bit further because it didn't really fix our problem, it just changed it. So far we've seen 3 different oil pressure issues here. When I bought the car, the guy was complaining, the previous owner was complaining of oil pressure warnings at highway cruising. He said he's been driving it for a while. Okay, fine. I saw that on the highway when we drove it home. When we started looking at things, he had unplugged the oil pressure control valve, which would explain that. So when I plugged it in, I started getting oil pressure warnings pretty much immediately on startup. Okay, I then went ahead and replaced all the sensors. That didn't really fix the issue, so we got right down to we have to change the oil pump. Now, I did have a intake cam implausible signal code that was kind of coming up with the oil pressure warnings, but I figured maybe that was related to the pressure, and, you know, change the pump, everything will be great. We've now got brand new pump, brand new valve, brand new sensors. So as far as I'm concerned, the entire feed system, the entire oil feed system is you know, replaced. The issues that I had have gone away, so I don't have an oil pressure warning at startup, and I don't have an oil pressure warning at, you know, high RPM or whatever. However, we now have entered into a very, very specific problem, still related to oil pressure, unfortunately, and that is at about 1500 RPM, I see the engine basically hesitates. It feels like it misfires, right at a very specific RPM. It misfires and throws an oil pressure warning. If I then rev the motor, the oil pressure warning just disappears and everything's fine. So just driving around the neighborhood here, this only happens when I stop, flick it into first gear, and take off, because that's the only time I really pass through 1500 RPM. And it pretty much does it consistently, like every time it does the same thing. The camshaft implausible signal is still there. I'll show it to you in a sec. And that's it. So otherwise the car actually runs really well. It drives, it's got a lot of power, like there's no weird noises coming out the front or anything like that. It's just that one issue. I just wanted to show you what the car's actually doing, because this behavior is described by other people, and it's good that we need to document it, so that at least if anybody watches this video and has seen this before, you guys can, try and point out to it. As far as I can tell, our issue is intake cam adjustment. Okay, so let me see if I can produce it. And it comes up, it's not just in first gear, second gear. If I go into about 1500 RPM, it does the same thing. So it's right about 1500. See, right there. And it will sit there, and basically it shakes the car right there. it basically shakes the car as I'm driving it right around 1500 RPM. Basically, look, it feels like a misfire. Okay, now if I go up, no issues. The car drives perfectly fine, no problems. We'll take a look at the actual values for the cam adjustment, but it's only in here. I'm in second gear, so let's bring it down to 1500 RPM. Let's see if we can catch that again. Yeah, right there. So you see what it does? So right there at 1500 RPM, something happens, either some valve actuates or something like that, because right around 1500 RPM I get a significant misfire, even though it doesn't register misfire, and I get the EPC light for drivability. Boom, right there. Right, well, I'm looking at the data downstairs, making some graphs. I went ahead and picked up this piece, this guy. So this thing sits in the filter housing. Okay, I'm gonna pull the filter just to show you. And I don't think this is gonna fix anything, but it's just another piece of the puzzle. And when I had a look at it earlier, I'm gonna show you where it is. First of all, its filter's right there. But when I looked at it, when I pulled it out last time, it looked like the O-rings were fairly burned on the one that's in the car. So here's the filter coming out. Let's put that right there. And the piece sits right there. You see that? It's right there. That's it right there. Now what you want to do is you want to kind of grab it with something, and it just comes right out. It's not really held in any particular way. Now you can see this one's like, it comes out fairly easy. And once I have it here, I can kind of show you. Let's try not to get everything dirty here, but if you look at the O-rings on this, they look like they're pretty worn out. Let me see if I can. I don't know if you guys can see it. Maybe it's hard on the camera there, but the O-rings look like they're pretty old and burned. Okay, so they don't look like they're actually doing a whole lot of O-ring sort of work. Whereas this guy, the O-rings are nice and are basically brand new, so they're sticking out quite a bit. And again, I'm not sure if you can see this on the camera, but you can kind of see the difference between the two. All right, that's done. So the only other parts that I haven't actually replaced yet are the magnet, the little valve that's inside here, and obviously the cam, but I'm not gonna try and replace the cam. So once I have verified that this doesn't fix a problem, then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to borrow a working magnet and valve from another engine. If that doesn't solve the problem, then we're basically, this is where we're going to stop with the parts. If I'm feeling a little adventurous, I'm going to actually try and open the phaser because I suspect the screen might be stuck somewhere in the veins of the phaser, not allowing it to rotate as fast as it's supposed to, probably blocking the flow of oil, whatever the case is. It's not serviceable. It's not meant to be serviceable, but I'm out of options, so I'm definitely going to try that out. Okay, let's start the engine with this, let it warm up a little bit, see how it behaves. So as I suspected, no issues while the engine is warm. So up until 90 degrees on the coolant, and that generally coincides with about 85, 90 on the oil. No issues at 1500 RPM, car drives fine, no misfires, no shaking of any sorts. The moment I hit 90 degrees, I start having the exact same issue as before. Even with the part replaced, it does not basically solve the problem. So now I've got a check engine light actually. Boom, there it is, the EPC at 1500 RPM. One thing that I noticed while I was looking at some of the data yesterday is that it appears right around 1500 RPM. The specified cam angle goes, there's a big dip, like it goes down quite a bit, and the actual valve angle, the actual cam angle, does not follow. It kind of starts going down, but not fast enough. It appears these are the biggest peaks, which is probably what triggers the EPC light. The biggest difference between the two happens at that 1500 RPM, even though there's a difference between the two of them for the entire RPM range other than idle. So from what I can see, once the specified starts going down and the actual does not follow, the computer actually resets. It brings the specified right back up to 28 degrees where it meets up the actual, and it starts from scratch. So it looks like this is what triggers the EPC light. I still don't know what actually causes it, right? So we don't know why it actually does that, but you know, here it is. There's your EPC light right there, and 1500 RPM, just nice and consistent, which is very different than what we used to have as far as problems go. Now, I can try a couple of things. I can try and unplug the magnet. Perhaps the lack of the magnet is going to cause the computer to, you know, go into some sort of a mode that won't actually adjust the cam. It'll keep it at 28. It'll throw a code. Maybe it's going to be limbo, but it's certainly something to try out. And the other option is just to compare the working conditions of this and log it against an actual known working car, which I'm gonna maybe try and do by the end of this week. So that's it. That's the problem's not solved. I didn't expect the problem to be solved. It's just another piece of the puzzle, but that, you know, those O-rings needed to be changed. I'm a little surprised they don't actually come with the filter when you replace it, because they should be changed. And usually for, you know, a bunch of other cars that I've had, when you have those little O-rings in the housing, they just come with the filter and you just swap them out. But anyways, doesn't matter. It was like 20 bucks, replaced it, didn't fix the problem. Okay, so we have to keep digging. Here's another quick thing that I just tried. I unplugged the magnetic solenoid that pushes on the variable valve timing valve, and I lost the EPC light, disappeared. I don't know if you guys can see this, but I don't have that hesitation at 1500 RPM anymore. Now, it doesn't fix our problem, but it points to the fact that it's definitely cam timing related. Okay, now this entire time that I've been driving this, I did not actually get the oil pressure. I get the EPC, but I don't get the oil pressure warning. So perhaps we might have fixed one of the two issues that we had with this scenario, which was the oil pressure triggering at the exact same time as that cam code. And with the magnet unplugged, the cam code's gone. Chances are, with the magnet unplugged, computer goes into some sort of a mode where it doesn't adjust the valve timing. So that's to be confirmed, and I wonder if a different magnet might work different. Okay, we'll confirm that. Okay, the last thing we're gonna try before I go and rip into the cam phaser is to actually replace the magnet and the valve with known working ones. So I've pulled a set off of a Tiguan that I've got. So I'm gonna swap these out just to see if it still behaves the exact same way, and after that we're gonna take the lid off and actually get into the phaser. Right, we've just about run out of ideas and things to check on this oil system here. So what we're gonna do is actually do something you're not supposed to. Not that you're not supposed to, but it's not designed to be serviced. Let's have a look at the phaser. The only idea that I have left over is that either the phaser is broken or there's an issue with it, and then we're gonna start basically put everything back together. And if it doesn't fix, you know, we've got the new cam bridge, I've got the new solenoid, I've got a bunch of other stuff, so I'm gonna replace a bunch of parts. If that doesn't fix it, that's it. I'm not changing the camshaft, even though I think it probably needs to be changed, but I just don't have the time. So we're gonna drive the engine until we figure out, you know, whether we're swapping a diesel or whatever. Anyways, let's have a look at the phaser now. Up until I think, so this is a 2009, so up until 2009 the phaser was made serviceable, so you could actually take it apart and you know, service it, I guess. You certainly could buy the part. That's no longer the case, and it's a little bit interesting because if you look at the bolts that Volkswagen uses to close it, here's the phaser. I've already taken it apart, but basically it uses these Torx 5 secure bolts that took me like a week to find a tool for them. It exists, I found it, I got it on Amazon, I'll put a link below. But basically you can take this apart without this Torx 5. There's just no way you can put a regular Torx or anything. I tried. I definitely messed up one of the bolts by trying to hammer in a Torx 6 point. So anyways, don't bother with that. But what I want to do is I want to have a look at the phaser and how it works, and perhaps what some of the problems could be. And then we'll see if there's anything we can do to fix it. Before we talk about the actual phaser and how it works, let's have a look at how the oil actually flows through the system. So I've got here the old cam bridge. So exhaust cam, intake cam. This basically sits right there in the front of the engine. This guy sits in front of that, and so on and so forth. So oil comes up the head and into this check valve here. The problem is, and this is why you have to replace the bridge when you do the job, is that Volkswagen in the infinite wisdom put this little oil screen right there in front of the check valve, like that. And the problem is this oil screen fails. Not possibly, it definitely fails. Every single one I've taken apart comes apart. Basically, this half the screen is missing, and so on and so forth. So what ends up happening is the oil comes through the screen into the check valve, up into the bridge, out through there, into the variable valve control, which sits right there. So basically the oil enters into the valve, and then the magnet, which sits in front of that, the magnet solenoid, pushes the valve to open and close the oil flow. So when that screen fails, it comes right up into the oil passage and gets stuck right where the camshaft basically rides in here. So you can see the damage that this has caused and all the scoring here, and you can actually see that on the valve as well. But it's pretty, I mean, this is pretty deep. This is deep. Now, you know, the guys have put this back together with the old one. It's not ideal, but they did. It still works. It's just you never know how well this really rides anymore. So we went ahead and picked up a new one. You can see it's nice and smooth. There's no damage obviously to it. And we went ahead and actually removed the screen just to avoid any issues in the future. So now oil comes up, enters into the valve. The magnetic solenoid pushes the valve, opens the flow of the oil. So now let's go have a look at the actual phaser and how that works. Right, so oil comes up through the bridge into the through the screen, into the check valve, up the bridge, and into the valve here. Now it happens through these two holes. So the oil comes in through here, and then the magnetic solenoid opens the valve by pressing it forward, which passes the oil into the actual phaser. Now how the phaser works, let's see if I can get there as close as possible so you guys can see this. But basically you've got these little plungers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 plungers that basically get pushed by oil. They get pushed left and they get pushed right by oil to change the timing of the chain. So basically the outside of the phaser is hooked up to the chain permanently, and then oil rotates, basically pushes the middle, which is attached to the camshaft, left and right, depending on what you want to do. So that happens through these two oil holes right there. One on this side, and there's one right down there that you can probably not see. So the oil will come out here and push the plunger this way, and then the other way the oil will come out of here and push the plunger the other way. Now one little thing that has to be kept in mind when there's no oil, so for example in the scenario where I unplug the magnetic plunger here, so there's no oil coming through here, this phaser stays locked in the far left. So I think this is 28 degrees. You can see it on the graph. So this is what happens when you're actually cold or idle, whatever the case is. Basically the plunger sits all the way left here. So this happens by having this little pin that actually comes in here. So this is what it looks like. Show you real quick. So this pin goes right through the phaser and locks the center section to the outside housing through the back plate, which is back there. So basically in normal circuit, like when the engine starts, this is actually all the way up here and is locked with this pin. The moment you have oil pressure here through the magnetic actuator, it pushes the pin out, which allows the camshaft to start moving freely. Okay, that's how it works. So, couple of things. First of all, I opened this up. I mean, I knew about the lock, but I didn't really think about it too much. So anyways, the moment I opened this up, this is the front plate here, right? So this sits like this, right? So the moment I opened this up and I got the bolts out, it actually unlocked the mechanism here by basically removing the pressure on the pin. So what I'm happening is the center section jumped up to where, like, the chain didn't really move, but the center section jumped up to where it was, you know, based on the pressure of the valves and whatever the case is. So in order for me to put this back together, I actually have to rotate it so that the center section goes all the way left. I can put the pin in, then I can tighten the bolts. So that's a bit painful. But anyways, what I'm looking for here is any signs of damage. So you can, I talked about the screen traveling through. You can see all the scoring on the camshaft here, but let's say that's fine. The oil will still flow through and go into the hose. That's fine. The problem is you don't really know what happened to that screen once it came through here, because if pieces of it entered the oil stream and actually came inside the phaser, they can do a whole lot of damage. The thing is, I didn't really see anything in particular that would indicate some severe damage up here. The plungers are all fairly free. You can kind of see they move back and forth a little bit. Obviously be careful, you don't want to like push them out of the housing here. So what I was looking for was any damage or any garbage or anything like that. But in fact, I didn't really see anything in particular. The one stuff that, the sort of stuff that's a little bit obvious is where on the plunger, and I don't know if you guys can see that right there. So this is not evident on this plunger up here. So here it's nice and flat, and this goes against this flat wall up here. So you can tell that when this plunger fits here, it's nice and it's a nice clean mating surface. The one down below, the walls here are actually worn out. So instead of having a nice flat surface, you're having this sort of point contact, and you can feel very, very scratchy surface here. So it's actually quite worn out. And this is on one. You can see that down here too, and at least you can also see that actually down there on this plunger as well. So you can see that on at least 3 out of the 5 plungers. 2 of them up here are not scored out, the other ones are. I don't think this has anything to do with the screen. I think this is just regular wear and tear. I don't really know why though. That said, I've never really opened one of these up before, so maybe this is completely normal. The fact is that this could contribute to you know, these things not going all the way, or you know, can't reach the actual full I think it's plus minus 28 degrees, whatever the case is. So perhaps the plungers hit a certain point, doesn't correspond to the what the computer is expecting, and it kind of resets it or whatever. The phaser is damaged. There's damage to it. I just don't know if it is severe enough to cause the issues that we're having now. There's nothing I can do here short of taking this whole system apart, replacing the camshaft or whatever. There's not a whole lot I can do. So the only thing I can really do here is try and clean this out as much as possible. So a lot of oil passages here, and you know, there's a good possibility something got stuck somewhere, even though I can't really see it. So the only thing I can think of is to basically clean this up as much as I can, oil it up, and close it. All right. The one thing you obviously have to be very, very careful about is that you've got all sorts of openings all over the place here. So be very careful not to throw anything in there. And for example, I almost lost this pin right down the crankcase. So you definitely want to avoid doing that. And we have to put this back together, which is going to be a little bit problematic because it obviously takes 2 people, and we have to somehow align the camshaft back to its original point. So I can put the pin, lock it in with the back plate, put in the front. Anyways, it's complicated. So let's clean this up. Let's put everything back together. We've got a new valve, we've got a new bridge, we've got new everything. So once we close this up, it's either going to work or it's not, and then we can just, you know, light the car on fire and send it to the junkyard. Okay, let me just show you real quick what the phaser actually does. So we're just going to turn it here. So what we're doing is we're turning the camshaft against the chain, right? So this is what the phaser does. So that oil will generally do that. You'll basically push the plungers left and right to adjust the camshaft timing against the chain. So this seems to be moving fine, and I honestly cannot see anything stuck anywhere or any garbage. You can definitely see the wear and tear, you just can't I don't see any problems with it. So anyways, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna clean this up, blow it out as much as we can, and try and put it back together. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit complicated because we have to get, this is where the pin sits right there, and it locks the back plate. So we have to get it in place, put the front plate, and bolt it together. It's like I said, it's not really meant to be serviceable, so you just got to be very, very careful while we're doing it. So I think what the idea is now, we've got the back plate kind of held by the two screwdrivers, pins in place. So now we're going to put the front plate, rotate the phaser so it gets to far left, and then hopefully be able to put the two screws in the front. Tricky. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world, but I think we got it. The only thing you got to watch out is for the locking pin and where it goes, and after that basically match the planks. Now the front and the back plates, there's the back, there's the front. The front is actually marked, so the front has a mark on the front of it that matches the body of the phaser. So the front one has a very specific spot where it has to go. The back, you have to match with where the pin is. So like we said, in stock position, it has to be in the far left. So basically I figured out where the pin's gonna end up in. I marked them, and we actually closed them up with the bolts, and then by turning the phaser, the pin ends up in the hole that's in the back plate, and that should lock it. So if we've done everything right, that should be it. We're just tightening these up right now, and then we're gonna start putting everything back together. Right, so everything's new. I'm looking at the values here. I think everything looks all right. We have adjustment. So let's go for a quick drive, and that's it. We either fixed it or we're done. This is it, guys. I think we've got some good news here. I don't have the hesitation at 1500 RPM anymore. I don't have any check engine lights. I do not have the EPC light. I don't have any oil pressure lights. Basically, I've got nothing. Now, the oil is at about 75 degrees right now. We're just gonna do a quick run here. I'll hold it at about 1500 RPM. That's where you guys, we saw all the problems before that. But I think we might have fixed this. Okay, let's have a look. So 1500 is where we were having the issue. So I've been trying to get it possibly to replicate, but not really seeing it. We'll have a look at the graph downstairs just to see how it's behaving now. But I think we've got it, guys. I'm a bit happy, I'm not gonna lie to you. This is this has been a couple of weeks of chasing our tails with this issue. All right, good enough. Yeah, I lied to you guys. So literally 5 minutes after I recorded the last little bit, I shut the car off. I try to start it again. The car doesn't start now. I mean, it starts, but very hard. Battery is completely dead, which is a little strange. Hooked up a new battery, started it up. Oil pressure issue pretty much immediately at idle, which does not really make any sense. On top of that, I now have a slight tick. Maybe I'm making it up, but I'm hearing somewhere from the exhaust valves. Yeah, I'll see if you can hear it right now. I started getting a slight tick there, and I'm getting the hesitation at 1500 RPM. It's back up. So I'm gonna close this video here. I honestly have no idea what's going on with this. I'm done. I have no more parts to put it, and frankly, even if I had more parts, I don't know what to replace anymore, because we've basically replaced everything on this. The only assumption I've got right now is that whoever rebuilt this engine screwed it up somehow, and either there's a blocked oil passage somewhere, or God knows. Fortunately, I don't have any more time to deal with this car, so I think what's gonna happen now is I'm just gonna park it over there, and until I have an engine for it, whether we're gonna throw the diesel or whatever, I'm not playing with this anymore. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. If you've ever dealt with it, if you have any idea. The knocking is a little weird. It showed up after, so it's not like we messed up the timing or anything by opening the phaser. It just came up. I drove it around for probably a good 10-15 minutes without a single hiccup. Oil pressure was fine, no codes, nothing. And now it doesn't start. It has a very hard time starting. And I've got the oil pressure at idle, and I've got the hesitation at 1500 RPM. There's a clear issue with the oil pressure, and sadly, I can't really do anything with it anymore. So I'm very defeated right now. I don't know what to do. By all means, please, if you've ever dealt with this, you know, let me see some ideas. I'm done. This engine has to come out and I guess get stripped down, and so we can see where the previous mechanic basically screwed up, because as far as I'm concerned, that's exactly what's going on here. Something's clogged up. All right, so really sad to finish the episode on this note. I really hope that we were able to fix it. It looked like we did. We haven't. So thanks for watching. If you have any ideas, by all means comment below. I do need some support here because I'm out of ideas. All right, if you want to see more of this, maybe there's going to be a part 2 to this. If I figure something out, click subscribe. If you like the video, if you think that we did everything we possibly could, you know, hit the thumbs up. Other than that, have yourself a nice day, and hopefully you can sort your car problems out. All right, see you later.